If your data isn't connected, your dealership isn't operating at full speed. Curator brings all your dealership data together to drive better leads, better conversations, and better results. Visit goobagoo.com/curator to learn more.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Hyundai and Kia both set January sales records. Hybrids dominate the latest Consumer Reports picks for top new cars. And Penske and Hendrick top retail customer sentiment rankings for the second straight year. Plus, Chrysler brand CEO Chris Feuell talks about the minivan resurgence and why Chrysler is moving away from its all-electric strategy.
Chrysler's always been known as a mainstream brand that delivered great value and luxury at an affordable price. So that's really the direction that we're moving forward in.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Hyundai and Kia set January U.S. sales records, with both brands driven by strong hybrid and crossover demand. Hyundai's deliveries rose 2% to more than 55,600 vehicles, while Kia jumped 13% to about 64,500, marking the first time since February 2025 that Kia outsold Hyundai. Hyundai said hybrid sales surged 60%, offsetting weaker EV volume after federal tax credits ended. For Kia, crossovers like the Sportage, Telluride, and Seltos all posted January records. Overall, the results signal momentum for both automakers coming off record U.S. sales in 2025. You can read all of the latest U.S. sales results at autonews.com as they come in. Hybrids are taking over the top spots in the Consumer Reports 2026 vehicle rankings. 9 of the 10 best new cars, trucks, and SUVs are hybrids, with only one fully electric vehicle making the list. Consumer Reports says hybrids now deliver the convenience of gas engines with better fuel economy and handling, and they've gotten so refined, drivers barely notice they're in a hybrid. Winners include the Honda Civic, Toyota Camry, and Ford Maverick. The Tesla Model Y was the sole EV pick. And Penske Automotive Group and Hendrick Automotive Group held onto the top spots in Reputation's annual customer sentiment rankings for the second straight year. The rankings are based on online reviews collected throughout 2025. They measure how dealership groups and brands perform in areas like sales, service, pricing, and finance. Reputation says both groups succeeded because they're laser focused on customer satisfaction, constantly responding to reviews and using AI to analyze feedback. Among brands, Lexus topped the luxury segment, while Subaru led non-luxury. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Dealership mergers and acquisitions are still going strong heading into 2026. Automotive News retail tech reporter Mark Holmer is here in Las Vegas ahead of this week's NADA show. He caught up with George Corollas, president of the Presidio Group, on the sidelines of Auto Team America's annual summit. They talked about the state of dealership M&A and what's driving consolidation this year.
What is the state of M&A and dealerships in 2026?
Sure. Well, it's a highly active market and continues to be, leading the industry. We see a high cadence of deals that have transacted over the last 5 years post-COVID, and we see that cadence continuing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of unique buyers, more buyers than there are sellers in the market, and so we see a lot of activity in the market this year and into the future as consolidation continues. The market's still highly fragmented, and we're going to talk about that as well.
So if there are more buyers than sellers, does that mean that they're approaching dealerships that hadn't really expressed interest in selling and trying to get them to?
Well, there's a regular cadence of that, of course. Most of the deals that happen are, through advisors like us, but there are oftentimes one-on-one. And the average dealer, we hear this all the time,
sure,
gets called daily from brokers or even dealers that are looking to grow and acquire because, again, there's more buyers out there than there are deals available on the market.
How are dealers reacting to getting cold calls like that?
Yeah, they don't necessarily love them, but they're used to it.
Okay.
So it's just kind of part of the deal, and most of them are professional and respectful about it. But it is, again, more the cold call is not really where the activity comes from.
Okay. Is there anything new about M&A in 2026 that dealerships should know about?
I think there's a trend that we see continuing. We represent a lot of the largest companies and a lot of the public companies in the industry. And this trend of portfolio management where dealers, as they're growing, will take a step back to go 2 steps forward to optimize their portfolios. Sometimes that means selling off stores that don't match with their long-term strategy. And we see that as that cadence picking up, and we see a lot of activity more along those lines. And so, this year, for example, we have 7 deals closing in the next couple months, and all but one relate to portfolio management activities by large groups. And so, we see that as a higher proportion of activity in the space as dealers optimize their portfolio.
So portfolio management means that they're looking at everything they have and they're saying, we could sell this dealership and get another one that fits our strategy better.
Yeah, that's right. There's all different reasons. Sometimes you just have a dealership that doesn't work for you, isn't generating the return, is requiring a lot of human capital, too much human capital, the 80-20 rule. That's one reason. Oftentimes there's geographic outliers. There's diversification of brand, maybe too much of one brand. And just ultimately, it's an ROI and a human capital and an ROE play, a return on effort.
Okay. In 2026, I'm wondering if there's a private dealership that's going to approach the scope of the big 6, the publicly traded ones. Is there anyone that's getting closer?
Well, there are a few that are already there, right? Some don't report their obviously their holdings and their revenues, but I'd say aside from the large groups that already exist, I don't expect to see that, but we do expect larger groups to continue adding stores and continue to improve their portfolios. But a majority, there's only 24 dealership groups that own more than 50 stores in the country. And there's only 9 that own more than 100.
Really?
And most of those are the publics, and then there's 3 privates that are in that realm. And so a majority of the bulk is 11 to 50. And again, that's actually of the larger groups. And that's just, I think, a fraction of the total groups out there as well, with the biggest proportion, 2/3 owning just 1 to 10 stores. And so we'll see those groups continuing to grow and some being sellers, obviously, and some obviously being buyers, and
Sure.
a little bit of a reshuffling of the deck.
Okay. Heading into 2026, then, is there a dealership group that's on an acquisition track that we should pay more attention to? What's the one that people will be talking about?
Oh, there's numerous of them, but I'll keep that. I won't comment on that. There's a lot of groups that are active in the space and that we see as innovators and growing. And so I think you guys do a good job at Auto News of reporting on that as it is.
Fair enough. Is there anything you want to add about dealership M&A in 2026?
Yeah, look, I think dealers will continue to be a little bit more diligent and focus on quality of what they're acquiring, not just buying for the sake of buying, which we saw a little bit more of at the peak of the pandemic.
Sure.
So I think it'll be more intentional growth. But again, there's a large imbalance between the number of folks interested in buying, probably 10 to 1, than there are deals on the market. And we'll talk about that in my presentation today.
Okay. And I'll be sitting down for that. Looking forward to it.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Appreciate
it.
Coming up next, Chrysler brand CEO Chris Feuell explains why minivans are making a comeback and what's next for the Chrysler brand. That's next on Daily Drive.
If you're an automotive supplier and you know your team is building the next big thing, prove it on the industry's biggest innovation stage. Automotive News is now accepting applications for the 2026 PACE program. PACE Awards recognize traditional and non-traditional suppliers worldwide for new product, process, and business model innovation, and entries must be innovations already commercialized through a sale to an automaker. Still pre-commercial but past the pilot stage? PACE Pilot recognizes post-pilot, pre-commercial innovations across automotive and future mobility, products, software, IT systems, and processes with the potential to revolutionize an automaker's business. All submissions are reviewed by an independent panel of judges, and MEMA is the exclusive lead sponsor. Ready to be recognized? Apply by February 9th at autonews.com.
Your dealership is sitting on mountains of customer data. But when that data is messy and spread across different systems, it's almost impossible to actually use. That's why Gubagoo developed Curator, the automotive industry's first unified intelligence engine. Curator pulls customer data from everywhere: your CRM, DMS, website, even your marketing tools. It cleans it, connects it, and pushes it back into your systems. The result is a complete real-time record of every customer. Let's get to know Alan Telleriato. For nearly 50 years, they've built their business on one simple idea: take care of the customers, and they'll keep coming back. But even with decades of loyalty and data, things were getting messy. BDC manager Seth Stanage puts it best. Customers would reference visits from years ago, but the team could only see the most recent record. Finding the full story meant digging through duplicates across multiple systems. That all changed with Curator. Seth says their marketing data is the best it's ever been thanks to Curator, enabling Alan Tillery to target buyers at just the right moment and making sure they're the first and last dealership those shoppers connect with. The results speak for themselves. Curator collected more than 20,000 data points a week and generated leads that boast a nearly 30% closing rate. Want to see what Curator can do for your dealership? Visit gubagoo.com/curator to learn more.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Chrysler saw double-digit sales growth in the first half of 2025. The brand credits millennials entering the parenting stage, Gen X and boomer grandparents, and even gig economy workers discovering the Pacifica's versatility. Now Chrysler is launching a refreshed Pacifica in May and pivoting away from its all-electric brand strategy in favor of affordable, mainstream vehicles. Automotive News Canada digital and mobile editor Greg Layson spoke with Chrysler brand CEO Chris Feuell about what's driving the minivan resurgence and what's next for Chrysler. Here's a piece of their conversation on the latest episode of the Automotive News Canada podcast.
Chris, let me ask you, minivan sales have surged in Canada, obviously led by the Pacifica and the Grand Caravan. They're also up in the U.S. What's going on in the minivan market in North America?
Well, the minivan segment in general has been really strong. Double-digit surges in the first half of the year and then settled into a more normal pace in the second half of the year. But that allowed Chrysler to gain market share in H2. And a lot of that had to do with additional support that we were providing from both marketing and sales, and we improved our inventory position in the second half of the year as well in both the U.S. and Canada. Happy to report that we retained sales leadership in the U.S. and also regained minivan sales leadership in Canada for 25 calendar year.
Is there something that was leading to a kink in the supply chain or in terms of inventory? What was sort of ironed out, if that was indeed part of the reason for the resurgence? What happened in 2025 that sort of smoothed it out and allowed you to sell more minivans?
Well, what happened was Liberation Day. So with the uncertainty related to tariffs and what the various costs related to the tariffs were going to be, we derated the line speed at Windsor for a brief period of time until we got a better understanding for how the tariffs were going to be impacting the business. And that reduction in production for about 6 weeks got our inventory levels down to about a 30-40 day supply in Canada and the U.S. And when we ramped production back up in late May, it allowed us to restore the inventory levels to healthier levels and improve our mix and thus improve our turn rates.
Are customers moving from other 7 or 8 seat vehicles to minivans because they provide the same thing, but they also provide cargo with stow and go, and they have various other options and advantages over other 7-passenger vehicles? Are you seeing any movement or shift of customers away from a 7-passenger vehicle that's an SUV to a minivan?
To a certain degree, yes. We've got one of the largest cohort groups, the millennials, that are coming into the parenting life stage, and they are considering minivans at a much higher level than they had in previous years. So that's really attractive. We're also seeing a shift in demographics where we've got older buyers So minivans have always had a bimodal distribution of customer segments. You've got, parents with younger families, and the millennial cohort is growing in size in their consideration for minivans. And then you've got Gen X and boomers who are entering the grandparenting life stage. They're also active road trippers, and minivans are a great option for them as they're doing their road trip travels. And also the vehicle has really attractive ingress and egress and comfort level that's attractive to those customers. We're also seeing a higher level of consideration for people who are gig economy workers. Maybe they provide Amazon or Grubhub or DoorDash delivery services, DIY repairers that like the fact that they can fit a 4x8 sheet of plywood in a minivan when all of the seats are folded flat. So it's a really attractive multi-use vehicle. And for customers who aren't necessarily using extreme off-road 4x4 performance kinds of features, it's a good value for them as well. And it's a vehicle that can serve customers who are looking for the value end, and that's where the Grand Caravan is a really attractive option for customers, as well as a fully equipped Pinnacle Pacifica model, which has won multiple awards for the most luxurious interior in the minivan segment. So we've got something for everybody.
What is the future for the minivan market, and specifically the Pacifica, now that 2025 and its resurgence is in the past? What do we see in 2026 and beyond?
We're seeing the minivan market continuing to maintain its current volume levels or even growing slightly. What we're excited to talk about is the fact that Pacifica is launching a refresh in April of this year. So start of production at Windsor begins in late April, and we'll start to see those new models hitting dealer lots in May. So very excited about that. We'll see a freshened exterior as well as a freshened interior and some new technology features incorporated in the vehicle. So we'll be in a position to talk more about that as we get closer to launch.
Earlier this week, I saw a video of a minivan with a Hellcat engine installed inside. Obviously, these are gearheads and enthusiasts that are tinkering with product that is out there and available. And earlier this year, last year now in 2025, Chrysler unveiled the Grizzly Peak concept, called it the Ultimate Adventure Minivan. Does any of this mean there's real potential for off-road, upscale, performance, and overlanding badging and branding for this segment? Is that realistic? Why or why not?
It is realistic. We're always looking for opportunities to tap new markets and fill unmet needs. And Grizzly Peak in particular really hit the sweet spot when we showed that at the Overland Expo last year. So this is a vehicle that when we took it to the Overland Expo and talked to customers, this is attracting a new buyer to the minivan segment, predominantly men around 40 years old. They said, finally, we're seeing a minivan that's attractive to me. And why it's attractive is not only the way it looks, but the way it performs, and the fact that it can be used as an overlanding vehicle or a daily driver. And it's just very appealing to those particular customers. And it's a much better value than a tricked out Sprinter van, for example, that can cost upwards of $100,000 or more. This is a vehicle that we can bring to market for $50,000 or less.
In terms of Chrysler as the brand, there was a plan to make the brand all electric. There was talk of the Airflow concept coming to fruition as an EV. What's the future for the brand now, and that product roadmap look like as you and I speak today?
Yeah, so we're definitely pivoting away from the intention of positioning Chrysler as an all-electric brand. It's obvious that customer preferences and needs have shifted, and also, as we celebrated our 100-year centennial anniversary last year, it's important for us to really get back to the roots of the brand, and that's being a brand that's squarely positioned for the mainstream market, delivering beautiful products with high-value innovation, well-engineered with the highest of quality. And Chrysler's always been known as a mainstream brand that delivered great value and luxury at an affordable price. So that's really the direction that we're moving forward in. And the refreshed Pacifica is going to deliver outstanding value and give customers something in every price range that they can imagine, from the Voyager and Grand Caravan at the value end of the equation, to Select and Limited, which are squarely positioned in mid-market, and then the Pinnacle trim level that is more skewed to upscale premium minivan segment.
You can hear our own Greg Layson's full conversation with Chrysler brand CEO Chris Feuell on the latest episode of the Automotive News Canada podcast, available now wherever you get your podcasts. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own David Phillips, Molly Boygon, and Gail Howe for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on Chrysler, NADA coverage from Las Vegas, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com. or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.